Hello, and welcome to another RPG Maker tutorial. I've been playing a lot of platformers recently, and if there's one thing everybody loves, it's ice physics. Fortunately, RPG Maker isn't usually used for platform games. So today we're going to be doing this ice sliding. Something with ice sliding. I'll just quickly demonstrate what I have here. So without pressing any inputs, you just keep moving until you hit an obstacle. Yeah, and you can use that to create a little environment where you're sliding around. I have two different implementations of this. We have the event on every single tile, which can be a little bit tedious to put down, but it works pretty well. Or we can just do it with a single event, which will cover every ice tile in the room. This has, well, there are pros and cons to each approach. This one we can probably set up in less than a minute, so let's do that first, and then we'll move on to the other one. This setup we don't actually need until we're doing the one event for the entire map. So let's start with this map here. And we're just going to add an ice tile here. Okay. Visually, it doesn't matter. You can put a tile there or not, up to you. Call it ice tile. Don't need to do anything special here, but it does need to be below character and event touch. So the players step onto it and then it does an action. Alright, and this is super easy. Set move route of the player. And we are just going to turn off the walking animation. Then we're going to tell them to take one step forward. And then we'll turn the walking animation on. Alright, and just like that, I guess you're not going to see the sliding effect too prominently here, but I promise I'm only hitting it once, and I'm sliding twice. It doesn't matter which direction I go, it works as intended. I guess you can see this thing flipping on and off there to show that you're currently being occupied by move route. Okay, so just like that, you have an ice tile. Copy that onto every tile that you want to slide, and you have a room full of slippery ice. Now, why wouldn't you want to do this? Well, the main reason is that events in RPG Maker cannot move onto other events. So if you wanted a monster that was chasing the player on the ice, something like that, you wouldn't be able to do that with this method because it would just get blocked by the existence of these events here. It wouldn't be able to move onto the ice. So that's why I came up with a second method. This one is a bit more complicated. Start position player. So let's just demonstrate this real quick before we get into it. So this does the same thing. It's just keep moving. And I will spam the up key here. Still just moving in one direction. You'll notice that with this one, the character is still animating while moving on the ice. There is a reason for that, which I'll get into when we get into the event. Or I guess I should just say it now. For whatever reason, when I try turning animation off on this one, the event breaks. So this is the problem with using a pre-made engine that someone else built. I know how to manipulate things in RPG Maker, but I have a hard time, I've never looked into the underlying code to see why it does what it does. So something like this, if I set it so that the animation goes off the way I did on the previous event, it just doesn't work anymore. I don't know why, but it's just a thing. All right, so for that, I have this saved elsewhere, so deleting it isn't going to cause me too much grief here. So first thing we want to do, set up 2 switches and a variable. Well, we look into our switches. Stepped on ice and slide, arbitrarily 1 and 5, doesn't matter, don't worry about where they are, you just need to have them. We also are going to need a player region ID. The rest of this we're not using for this tutorial, so don't worry about it. Okay, so 1 variable and 2 switches. Okay, so one other thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be using regions. I've done this in a lot of my tutorials. every tile that you want to be slippery, you have to make into a region. In this case, I've decided 1 is the slippery region, but obviously, player region ID equals 1. Just change these to whatever region you assign to be slippery, but probably if you have a large project, make a note somewhere so that you can remember what that region is being used for. All right, so the ice is slippery, but I deleted the event, so let's remake it. This is going to be ice slide control, and this is going to be a parallel. It's always running while the player's doing whatever they're doing. So first, get location info. I think that's here, yeah. Player region ID is going to be the player's current position, and we want the region ID. So that variable, I think it was variable 5 that I had set to player region ID, will now store the variable corresponding to the region that the player is currently standing in at all times, because this is a parallel. So no matter where the character is on the screen, that variable will have the region the player is standing in, which we are now going to manipulate. So if not switch, if this is equal to 1, which is to say the variable, the region is the region that we assigned to be the ice region, then in here we want to set a control switch on slide. And just like that, well, we won't see anything if I test it right now, but when we step onto the ice, the switch will be set to slide. And now let's make a new event, and what happens when slide is on. So condition switch slide. Again, don't forget to make this a parallel. Below characters doesn't really matter, but if this happens to be in a spot where you can walk, having it be below characters means that the player can just walk over the event without it being an issue. I usually tend to stick things like this inside walls anyway, where the player won't be walking, just to make sure that they aren't causing any issues, but that is a benefit to having it on that setting. Alright, so when we are sliding, well, we're going to have a loop. And in the loop, we're going to do the same thing as before. Get the player's region, get the region of the player and put it into this player region ID variable. And then we're going to check if player region ID is not equal to our ice region, then we're going to turn slide off. So if they're not on the ice, we don't want to be sliding anymore. And we're going to break the loop. So then stop processing all of this. Okay. But if we are, so this is if we're in this, so if we're not on ice, we do this, and we break the loop, which means that the rest of what I write here will not happen. So this will happen if we are in the ice region. So we are in the ice region, and then we're going to set move route. It's the same as before. Of the player, 1 step forward. Okay, 1 step forward, and we're not doing the walking animation off because it breaks the event. Again, I don't know why that's the case, but my testing did reveal that it is the case, so I'm just not going to deal with it. I think it's okay to have them animating a little bit. It's not what I'd prefer, but it's not bad either. It's an aesthetic choice. Alright, so set player movement route. Blah, blah, blah. We've done that. Okay. Now, this next part, we're going to check if the player is moving. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to run a script here, which is just going to be $GamePlayer.isMoving. So these scripts, you can go onto the webpage and find a list of all the script calls that are available in RPG Maker. What this one does is it takes the object of the player, that's what this is referring to, it runs a function, I guess, called isMoving, and it will return true if the player is moving and false if the player is not moving. So here, if GamePlayer.isMoving, so if the player is moving, we run this. We don't want to do anything, actually, if the player is moving. So what we're going to do is we're going to put an else in here. So else is going to be the opposite of this, if the player is not moving. So yeah, intentionally blank, we're not running anything if the player is moving. But if the player is not moving, we're going to set another switch, and I will show what this is about in a moment. Stopped on ice. Else we do that. And then outside of our if statement, but inside the loop, we will wait for 16 frames. Why 16 frames? Because that's how long it takes a player to move from one tile to another, assuming the standard move speed, which is 4 here, normal. If you change the move speed, you will have to change the number of frames that are being waited. Okay, so what is this stopped on ice dealing with? Well, if the player slides, actually I can demonstrate this right now because this should be working. So let's test what we have. It's not working. Okay, good to know. I must have failed to do something. I am waiting. I'm not supposed to be waiting. Skip if cannot move. We are not waiting here. We very deliberately do not want to wait. And in fact, I think, maybe it doesn't matter for the other event. Let's try that again. Okay, there we go. Nice and smooth. Spamming our buttons. Yeah, so works as intended. However, what happens if we hit an obstacle? Why does this always happen to me? I thought I tested this. Well, apparently, if we hit an obstacle, we're able to move. Oh, I know what it is. I copied the wrong event and started writing my tutorial. Yeah, okay. Because I did do this. Right. So we're done. The, man, professional work here. We don't actually need this at all. Which means that we don't need this at all. Alright, let's just try running this. One more time. I swear, I do test these things right before doing this, and something always goes wrong when I'm recording. Okay, so spamming my buttons, nothing happens. But if I hit an obstacle, I stop, and I regain control. Okay. Yeah, it seems to be working nicely. Alright, well, I think that's probably good. I don't need to belabor the point here. So page 3, stopped on ice, we don't actually need that. We don't need a lot of this. Okay. So simpler than what I previously had. I must have been doing something else. Anyway, that's 2 different ways to make ice sliding. I guess I'll just quickly reiterate why you might choose one over the other. This one is pretty simple, and it also allows you to stop the animation of the player moving. In fact, now that this wasn't working, I am going to test this again, just to make sure that I'm not crazy. Walking animation off, walking animation on. Okay, and now it's working. So it must have been something else that I was doing that was causing the issue. Well, that's it's good to know. So now you can take your preference. This is a much simpler event. Maybe it was this game player is moving that was causing an issue. I don't know. But yeah. Okay, so it's now up to you whether or not you want to stop the movement. This is what I was expecting it to do. And it's what it does. Excellent. Well, that'll be all for ice sliding. I will see you next time for something else.